This video is brought to you by Miniature Market. Thousands of board games, miniatures, and paints, discount prices at miniaturemarket.com.
Hey everybody, it's your old pal Ron. Over the last couple of weeks, we've been talking about the elite of Dungeon Quest, okay? And you know, you have to keep it to a certain range there, and what I mean by it is boxed editions, okay, and not strictly just solo things, because then you have to add in D100, a game I recently played, Kurt Nahalis, and some other things, you know, for Against Darkness. I think those things you have to keep separate. And when we talk about all-in-one box editions, you know, I seem to find when it comes down to it, there are three that are considered elite, okay? That is League of Dungeoneers, Dungeon Universalis, and then, of course, Warhammer Quest, which we're going to be talking more about that, because that has really started to come to life again. It's always been one of my favorites, but there's been some recent additions to things that I'm just waiting for one more thing to come in so I can cover it completely for you guys. And I've got a lot to say about Warhammer Quest. That's a video that you're going to see probably next week sometime, and I've already started working on it, and I want to make sure I got it down, because it's an amazing thing. So, you know, if we take those three and we consider those the holy grails, you know, right off the bat, and so, you know, this is subject to opinion, of course, okay, but you know, when I talk about dungeon crawls, these three games come up: WQ95, LOD, and DU. All right. My question is, and you know, especially with the latest edition of League of Dungeoneers, the upgrades and the 1.3 of Dungeon Universalis, and how that has kind of really just, you know, pushed the envelope a bit. You know, very big learning curve, but very in depth. And then, of course, you know, the overall just beauty of League of Dungeoneers, and then, of course, the historic and the ever-going Warhammer Quest 95. That, God, you know, GW, why don't you just reprint it? These three games always seem to be the cream of the crop, the holy grail. But that always wasn't the case. That always wasn't the case. There was a game that was unattainable, and even though it was simple, people looked at it. Of course, it was the predecessor to Warhammer Quest, and that's HeroQuest. Now, where does this fall? Okay, does it belong up in the elite status? No, I don't think so. No, just being honest, I don't think so, and I don't think people look at it that way, especially since it's become, you know, well saturated in the market today, which it's not a horrible thing, because it gives a chance to a lot of people to experience it and try it and bring their kids into dungeon crawls because of the simplicity, what it does, how it does it, you know, the 9 million expansions and things like that, and things like that they're doing, which is great. But are they watering this game down? Could be. But when we start talking about this game, we start talking about a second tier, okay? And what belongs on that second tier? And that's something that scratches my head, is, you know, where's the difference between the first tier, where we've got those three games that are considered, you know, have their flaws, but are considered those games that, if you are a dungeon crawler, that this is a game that you are going to put into your wheelhouse. And then you have what I would consider the next tier. Where does that fall in? What falls in for that? Do we start talking Shadows of Brimstone? Not really a dungeon crawl. But yeah, it is, you know, just because of how all over the place it is. And it's kind of hard to consider that a traditional dungeon crawl. Does, you know, you have to put, I think you really have to put HeroQuest on that just very slight underneath because of its historic value, how it started this metamorphosis into Warhammer Quest. I think that is a big player in this, and you know, just its historic value. And not only that, it is a great entry level game. When we talk about things like that, do we start talking about Dungeon Saga Origins? You know, does that fit on a second tier? Okay. Chronicles of Drungor, I think, is a tremendous dungeon crawl. Does that fit in that second tier? Okay. What are some of the games that you see as a second tier game that you really love? Descent, second edition. You know, that has a lot of love or hate, okay, compared to the first edition. Do you put the first edition kind of in between the elite and the second tier? You know, these are questions that I really wonder about, and you know, how would you answer these things? Can you include a Shadows of Brimstone, which is kind of a dungeon crawl, and yet because it goes all over the universe, you know, is it a traditional dungeon crawl? And where do you put, because there's a lot of hate for some games, Midara, who has gotten a lot of heat lately because of how things have played out. Gotta remember, this game came to life quite a long time ago, okay? And the second and third acts are somewhere, and people have been very vocal and not happy about the progress and the promises. Not for me to comment on. I don't know enough about it and things like that. Where does a Frosthaven go? Okay, combat, you know, Frosthaven and Gloomhaven, you know, with all the promise of the world of what it was going to be, turned out to be a kind of a Euro really grind, a real big grind. You know, battles and stuff like that are a grind. So, you know, does that go below a second tier? Swords and Sorcery, like I said, there is an extreme love and hate for that. Where does a Massive Darkness go? A Massive Darkness 2. You know, and some of those dungeon crawls, Claustrophobia, which is a traditional dungeon crawl for all the things that it is. Where do these things fit, and how do you place them? Pericles, which is a very interesting role-playing type of game, but very app heavy, you know. And then we can also talk about Descent, Legends of the Dark, which is a game that is very app heavy, and you know, where does that fall in? Is it better than second edition? Some people think it is, because of the app and because of what you can do with it, and the ongoing, you know, them constantly writing things for it and doing things for it. Could very possibly, you know, and I leave that up to you, because, you know, my opinions are just opinions at the end of the day. What about the, and I turn because I look at these things, but the Dungeons and Dragons box set, when you start talking about the Wrath of Asherlon, the Legend of Driz, Tomb of Annihilation, Dungeon of the Mad Mage, boy, do you even count Ghost of Saltmar, Castle Ravenloft, Temple of Elemental. Where do those fall in? Okay, as far as traditional dungeon crawls, all right, they do a little bit more than HeroQuest, but a lot of people were disappointed with some of those. But they always sold out. And so did HeroQuest. You know, you hear a lot of negatives, and even with the big boys, you hear some negatives. But except for Warhammer Quest 95. I mean, how much more perfect can a game get? And we'll be talking about that in a few days, trust me. I've got a lot to say about that, but we save that for another video. You know, and you know, when we get to those lower tiers, what do we consider on the second tier or below the second tier? Okay, because I think those two tiers, you have your you have your holy grails, and then you kind of have this mass of just really solid, good, well thought out dungeon crawls, and then you got that lower tier. And where does a lot of this stuff fit in? If you guys had to put things in second and third tier, what would be your second and third tier? And I ask you to put this into the comments, because I'm really fascinated with this subject. You know, I know where I feel with the games that I've played and what draws me in. I had somebody say that Descent Second Edition was something that was very personal to them and meant something to them. And that also comes into play. What moves you? Okay? What do you have memories of with your friends and stuff like that? It doesn't have to be the greatest game in the world, but to you, that might be the greatest dungeon crawl in the world because of what it does to you emotionally, and the memories that you create with it. And, you know, if a game can do that, it's done its job. But I'm curious where your second, you know, just a couple that you would consider second tier and third tier, you know, underneath these three giants. And we'll be delving into more of these, about these three giants going forward. But I also want to talk about some of the other great things that are out there. That, you know, not every game could be a Grail game. There are games that are just really good, but never can crack that thing. And where do you put things? Where do you see things? Where do you find that things fit? And, you know, I threw out a bunch of them. Maybe there's a lot more that you guys want to throw in there. I really look forward to hearing what you have to say. I really do. And where does this belong? Has it been, because of its re-release, kind of forgotten about a bit? I mean, they continue to make tons of stuff for it. I understand that. But does it still hold that same feel now that it's so accessible? You know? And, you know, this is another project that I'm working on to bring to the table, because it's something I also promised, and we plan on bringing this during our hiatus, shall we say, where we just have like 6 weeks of just playthroughs, pre-taped. So as I'm working on these things, you know, there's different questions and different things that go through my mind, and I really look forward to hear what you have to say, because it's very important to me. So, as always, until next time, it is your old pal Rob saying, we'll see you soon, everybody.